Rightio. So, yeah, so as mentioned before, yeah, we're going to be going through I guess the fire safety requirements for the building at number 288 North Terrace. In regards to plans and documentation you've got to do around that fire safety, there's the life safety plan that's required, and then we've also got how's it written in here? We've got our fire safety requirements. So for that fire safety requirements, can you think of any, what type of things we see around buildings, and what type of things do we have to think about in terms of those fire safety requirements that you can think of off the top of your head? Signage, yep, super important. And yeah, signage has to be clear, has to be visible. We have to be able to know where those things are very, very quickly. Like just a quick scan of the room here, we go, okay, there's a fire extinguisher over there. I can see that signage. What I can't see is any exit signage from this point, which is interesting because it says in the NCC that you do have to be able to. Although what I can see straight away is that that exit plan over there, which shows a lot of that fire information on it. Possibly a good thing for you guys to have a bit of a look at as well. Yep. So we've got signage. What else? What else do we have to think about? Fire safety.
The distance between the exit, like how far you run.
Yep. 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 Yeah, and so that plays into, that's predominantly what our life safety plan is about. It's about getting people safely to areas. Yeah, any other things we have to think about for fire safety?
What equipment to use?
Yeah, exactly. And what sort of equipment would we have?
Fire hose room.
Yep, fire hose room. Yep. What's that? Extinguishers. Yep. Sprinklers? Yeah. So yeah, this building with our sprinklers, here we go. So it's our sprinklers there, sprinkler here. So we've got what is it? 6 sprinklers serving this room. Sprinklers aren't required for every building. Well, as I guess that you can say for all of the fire safety stuff, they're required at, it's very much case specific based on the building classification, the height of the building, the occupancy of the building, the intended use of the building as to what fire system equipment is required. But yeah, certainly the common ones, hose reels and extinguishers, and hydrants as well. Any other things we have to think about for fire safety? Well, the only other thing I can think about, well, I guess it's not essentially equipment, but it's warning devices. So smoke detection and with our smoke detection, we've got both fire alarms and then smoke detectors. So they're two separate things. And there's smoke alarms, smoke detectors. Right. So having a look at the situation, the headings here for the NCC. What areas of the NCC do you think touch on all of these things? What do you think for going through this today? What do you think we'll have to have a look at?
Section C.
Yeah. Section C, fire resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Section D, access and egress. Section E, services and equipment. That's pretty good. Yeah. We'll also have to look at Section A, general requirements, because you've got to, building, everything starts with building classification. So you go building classification, type of construction, FRLs, etc., and then we get into access and egress and services and equipment. That's great. So. Yeah. So I'll open that up and have a look. And this should all be, that should all be very, how do I say it, very familiar to you. This whole process at this point in time should be very familiar. So classification of building, you know, we have a look at our classifications, we go, okay, that's what classification it is, and then part C 1.1, we work out what type of construction is required. Then we go to specification C 1.1, what are the FRLs, the fire resistance levels for all those building components. Right? That should be all very familiar to you. But what's good is if, you know, we get that, you know, if we're sure of our classification first, because building classification is something that will keep coming up again and again. And also, from time and again, throughout the fire systems, the type of construction will come up again and again as well. So have those two things written down. So because we've dealt a lot with the fire resistance, fire resisting construction, I won't go through that anymore today. But that's, you know, that's one of the things we'd look at initially. So moving on to D, access and egress. You can have a look at the performance requirements. Right, yeah, let's just quickly have a look at that. I'll try not to take too long on all this today, but so access must be provided to the degree necessary to enable people to approach the building from a road boundary and from any accessible car parking spaces associated with the building, approach the building from any accessible associated building, access work and public spaces, accommodation facilities, and you need to have the identification of access ways at appropriate locations, which are easy to find. It's all fairly standard. But what's important for us is provision for escape and the need to satisfy solutions. So we've got our performance requirements, and, you know, where deemed to satisfy solutions, proposed performance requirements 1, 6, 8, and 9 are satisfied by complying with these sections. So we're not contained in atrium, we're not within an alpine area, so we can move on. And we're not transport building or farm sheds. So move on to D1. So we'll start with D1.2, number of exits required. This one's a bit of an interesting one. All buildings, every building must have at least one exit from each story. So yeah, you know, so that rules out, I don't know, Bat Cave with a, Dr. Evil's castle that you can only access via a helicopter, you know. Apart from that, I think we'll be fine. So each story in the building has must be provided. So in addition to any horizontal exit, not less than 2 exits must be provided from the following. Each story, if the building has an effective height of more than 25 metres, so we're not that. So at the moment we can still get away with 1, possibly. A class 2 or 3 building subject to C 1.5. Well, we're not a class 2 or 3 building. So, but subject to C 1.5, we can quickly have a look at what that is. That's the concession for being a lower type of fire construction. We're not a class 2 or 3 building, so we don't need to worry about that. We're not designing for basements in class, and we're not a class 9 building. Access to exits without passing through sole occupancy unit, etc. An exit, or at least 2 exits if 2 or more exits are required. So far this is only telling us we need to have 1, but we can't stop at that, because we've got to. There are more situations at play which might mean, you know, we need to have more than 2 exits. Or more than 1 exit. What would those situations be, do you think? What would cause us to have
the need for more than one exit. If this isn't telling us so far. It's a bit. It's a good one. Yeah. No. Yeah. No, but that is really good. That is a really good one. No, mostly it's about the travel directions. So yeah, because if this is saying this says you need more than one exit if you're one of these things. We're not one of those things, so we're thinking okay, maybe we're not. But then if we keep moving on to D1 point, well, we'll come back to this actually. If we head on to D1.4, exit travel distance. So here we are, class 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 buildings, subject to D, E and F. No point on a floor must be more than 20 metres from an exit or a point from which travel in different directions to 2 exits is available, in which case the maximum distance of one of those exits must not exceed 40 metres. So you can have a look at your plans and go, okay, a person can be at this point in the floor, they can walk for 20 metres, and then at that point they need to have an option of 2 exits that are within 20 metres away. Now that, if we have a look at the definition of exit, well, is the fire, if we build a fire isolated stairway, is the exit at the point at which we open the door into the fire isolated stairway, or is it when we get out down the bottom in terms of our distance? Like when it says you have to be 20 metres from an exit, does that mean when we open the door into the fire isolated stairway, or is it from the bottom? I'll say no. So you've got That's that. If we can have a look at the definition of exit. So exit means any combination of the following that provide egress to a road or open space: an internal or external stairway, a ramp, a fire isolated passageway, a doorway opening to a road or open space, horizontal exit or a fire isolated passageway leading to a horizontal access. So so that means that once we enter our fire isolated passageway, into our fire isolated stairs, then we are at that exit. So that's the meaning of an exit. So what we have to achieve with our plans is ensure that at a certain point in the building, we have the option of choosing 2 exits and travelling no more than 20 metres to either of those, which should be really quite possible for your buildings, I think. What is the dimension of that? Actually, the dimension of that, the width of that building is about 40 something metres, isn't it? Yeah. So have a measure of your of that midpoint in there, but I think you'll be within 20 metres from the opening door. So so then also when fire isolated stairways and ramps are required, because you may think, okay, well, we don't. Well, actually, basically that sort of travel distance thing tells us we need to be in a fire isolated passageway, because if we're going from one of those upper floors and then we're travelling along and then we're going down some stairs before it becomes a fire isolated passageway, it's getting way above our 20 metres there. We're exceeding that. So pretty much, I think at this point we've decided, okay, you need fire isolated stairways. But if we were dealing with a much smaller building, this may come into effect. So in class 2 or 3 buildings, we're not that. In class 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 buildings, every stairway or ramp serving as a required exit must be fire isolated, unless, and then we've got class 9, stipulation for class 9 buildings. The building has a sprinkler system complying with specification E1.5 installed throughout. So that's not, but we're given our travel distances, we're not entertaining this idea anyhow. Or the required exit does not provide access or egress for and is separated from the extra story by construction having these FRLs. So yeah, so there are for smaller 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 buildings, we have the option of having non-fire isolated stairways if our travel distance is short of, and we have sprinkler systems or fire separation by those constructions. So, and then got in here D1.9, important to actually travel by. We should be looking at travel by fire isolated exits actually. So I think we've just decided that's what we'll be doing. So a doorway from a room must not open directly into a stairway, passageway, or ramp. It is required to be fire isolated unless it is from a public corridor, a sole occupancy unit, sanitary airlock, or the like. Yeah, so, well, I think we're not going from a separate room into a fire isolated stairway, so I don't think that's going to be an issue for us. We're going from the corridor into there. Each fire isolated stairway or fire isolated ramp must provide independent egress from each story served and discharged directly or by way of its own fire isolated passageway to a road open space or to a point in a story or space within the confines of a building that is used only for pedestrian movement, car parking or the like, and is open for at least 2/3 of its perimeter. That means that at the base of your fire isolated stairways, you have to open out to the outside. We can't be terminating our stairway inside that bottom floor and then having to go to the car showroom or something like that, or whatever you're using that showroom for. So I'd say yeah. So story served and discharged directly or by way of its own fire isolated passageway to a road or open space. And actually I had D1.5 to look at as well. Yeah. Where okay. Exits that are required as alternative exits of egress must be distributed as uniformly as practicable within or around the story served and in positions where unobstructed to at least 2 exits is readily available from all points of the floor, including loft and lobby areas. So we're not class 2, 2 or 3, or not class 9, so in all other cases 60 metres apart. So that, how do I say it? That 60 metres apart, we're going to be satisfying that, fairly sure we're going to be satisfying that anyhow, because if we travel, let's say, this is our building here, got an exit here, an exit there. We travel 20 metres to this point, there's 20 metres to either of those. We are not going to be, those exits aren't going to be more than 60 metres apart anyhow. So our maximum, the distance of these is 60 metres, but our travel distance means that we're within that anyhow. So that's the travel distances. So then we have to, and that's, we're going to go into D2 from here. No, okay, so scoot back up. So now we know, we've got a pretty good idea of where those exits need to be, how many exits we need to have by looking at D1. Now we have to work out how to construct those exits. What are the important points of that? So, one important consideration is for fire isolated stairways and ramps. So a stairway or ramp, including any landings that is required to be fire resisting shaft, must be constructed of non-combustible materials, and so that if there is a local failure, it will not cause structural damage to or impair the fire resistance of the shaft. So that type of thing, and that's more of that's got to be a design type thing in terms of if we have, say, our fire isolated stairway in here, and we do a landing stairway down there like that, right? That's our fire isolated stairway. What we don't want to be doing is having, say, steel I-beams that run through here and then to another part of the building, and then we have a fire in there like that. Our steel I-beam wants to do that. It starts breaking down this section of wall. We want to ensure that our construction elements are autonomous. That this is mounted in such a fashion that if that burns away or melts or something, it can collapse without taking chunks out of our fire isolated stairway. Or the things can be happening in here, and we're not destroying that, opening that up to the fire. But on your plans, you're going to be making notes to say, complies with D 2.2, because we're not, I guess, in terms of these drawings, we're not going into. Well, you may, if you wish, if you want to draw detailed or draw details of those connections, etc. You can draw them so they will work autonomously and they won't destroy those fire isolated stairways. Or you can say has to be constructed of non-combustible materials and in accordance with D2. So not cause any failure. So D 2.7, installations in exits and paths of travel. Access to service shafts and services other than to firefighting or detection equipment is permitted in the deemed to satisfy provisions. Section E must not be provided from a fire isolated stairway, fire isolated passageway, or fire isolated ramp. So the whole idea around that is that if people let's say they want to go get the hose reel, for example, and they go to get the hose reel, they have to open up the fire isolated stairway. They take the hose out, they head out, they start squirting the fire. They can't put it out, drop the hose, and they go to get out of there. The fire's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The hose ends up jamming that door open.
Oh no.
No, yeah, it's no longer a fire isolated stairway. So for that reason, these firefighting, detection equipment, etc., should not be incorporated within that space. It has to be on the occupant side of that fire isolated stairway. Any opening to a chute or duct intended to convey hot products of combustion from a boiler, incinerator, fireplace, or the like must not be located in any part of a required exit or corridor, hallway, lobby, or the like, leading to a required exit. That's a bit of a no-brainer. You don't want to have burning stuff inside an exit. Gas or other fuel services must not be installed in a required exit. Services or equipment comprising electricity meters, distribution boards or ducts, or central telecommunications, distribution boards, etc., should not be located in fire isolated stairway. Can you think of why that would be the case? I think electrical equipment, well, for starters, one of those things might actually be the source of a fire. And if we've got a distribution board also in a fire isolated stairway, that stuff, if there's, exactly, if things are shorting out and that starts to melt and we've got an electrical fire happening,
in there, then what do the people do? If we've only, yes, okay, if there's two exits, they can use the other exit, but if it is a building, this has to cater for all. Yeah, so that's the first thing. It might be the source of the fire, but secondly, in the case of a fire, you get shorting out of electrical and things like that, which may cause overloading of distribution boards and things like that in other aspects and cause a secondary. So we don't want people trying to exit a building amid, all the fumes and so on from electrical equipment combusting. So, move on from that. So, electrical wiring, of course, there's some exceptions to that though. Electrical wiring may be installed in a fire isolated exit if the wiring is associated with a lighting detection or pressurization system serving the exit. So some things we need to have in these exits in certain circumstances. A security, surveillance or management system serving the exit, or an intercommunication system or audible or visual alarm system, etc., or the monitoring of hydrant or sprinkler isolating valves. So all the emergency, like some of your systems will require power. So our emergency lighting and things like that, they will require power. So we can have those in those emergency exits. But they're the only exceptions. D2.8. Enclosure, look, and I don't expect any of you will be doing this in your fire isolated stairways and ramps anyhow, but we'll cover it. So fire isolated stairways and ramps, if the space below a required isolated stairway or fire isolated ramp is within the fire isolated shaft, it must not be enclosed to form a covered or similar enclosed space. So just keep it simple. Keep them open. Have the exit signage and the lighting be required, but beyond that, that's it. Handrails, steps, and that's and doorways. So don't go incorporating cupboards and things like that. Also, for non-fire isolated stairways and ramps, this sort of harks back to Project 2. We're not really interested in this in Project 3, but the space below required non-fire isolated stairway, or non-fire isolated ramp must not be enclosed to form a cupboard or other enclosed space unless the enclosing walls and ceiling have an FRL of less than 60-60-60, or any access door to enclosed space is fitted with a self-closing 60-30 fire door. So you can do it for non-fire isolated stairways and ramps. You can enclose them as storage spaces, but there are stipulations around that. But I think we're fairly sure that with our Project 3, we've got to have fire isolated stairways, and because of our travel distances, it's the killer. Right, so that's pretty much all you need to know about. The construction of them is the same for any of your other stairways and ramps as well, in terms of your slope relationships, your required 2 metre head height, minimum 2 metre head height, and door clearances. All those things are going to be the same. We don't need to revisit any of those sections. But then, because we can't go using lifts, etc., all this electrical equipment during a fire means that the fire isolated stairways, stairways have to comply for disabled access. So for emergency exits, but what we should do is then check, do those things comply with a fire isolated stairway? So we've got the first important part. So parts of a building to be accessible. In a building required to be accessible, so that's a building over a certain size, or a building designed to be accessible. And this is a place of this building is a place of employment, so it'll have to be accessible. Every ramp and stairway, except for ramps and stairways in areas exempted by D 3.4, must comply with. So for a ramp, except fire isolated ramp. Okay, so it's a fire isolated ramp, doesn't need to comply. For a stairway, except a fire isolated stairway. So we don't. Yeah. So our fire isolated stairways don't have to comply with 1428. So if you remember back to project 2, what are they called, the emergency stairways, because they weren't fire isolated, they were open. They had to comply because they're open, because they're not fire isolated. They have to comply to the disabled access. But as soon as we go making them a fire isolated stairway, well, then they don't have to comply. Can you think of why that would be? What's that?
Not really.
Basically because when it's a fire isolated stairway, things have to be enclosed.
Yeah.
We're dealing with tighter spaces, and we have to keep things far more compact because we're confining them within spaces. It just gets very difficult to make those spaces compliant with, particularly if we've got like with stairways that comply with AS 1428, we've got our handrails extending out 300 millimetres past the edge of the stairs. If we're going to be doing that in a fire isolated stairway where we've got walls around it, that I think it probably becomes more of a hazard than helpful. So that's D 3.3. Other section. So D 3.8, tactile indicators. For a building required to be accessible, tactile ground surface indicators must be provided to warn people who are blind or have a vision impairment that they are approaching a stairway. But other than a fire isolated stairway. Okay, so we don't have to provide tactile ground surface indicators for a fire isolated stairway, or an escalator or passenger conveyor, but a ramp. Except fire isolated ramp. So for these ones, we don't need to provide those tactile indicators. And that's right. 3.6, signage. The important bit of that. So, in a building required to be accessible, braille and tactile signage complying with specified D 3.6 must. 3.6. Specification D 3.6. Let's go there. Okay, so it sets out heights and locations. Right, we'll head back. So required to be accessible, etc. So incorporate the international symbols of access or deafness as appropriate in accordance with AS 1428, and identify each a sanitary facility within a and space with, so that doesn't apply to us because it's no, it does. So a sanitary facility, so we need to have tactile indicators to show location of a sanitary facility, and space with a hearing augmentation system. I don't think we'll be required to have one of those. Identify each door required by E 4.5 to be provided with an exit sign and state exit and then level and either the floor level number, etc. 4.5, exit signs. So an exit sign must be clearly visible to persons approaching the exit and must be installed on, above or adjacent to each door, providing direct egress to or from a story two. So yes, we will have to have braille indicators for vision impaired for exits, but so for any of those exits, all that information, and also for sanitary facilities, they'll have to have those braille indicators as well to say location of sanitary facilities, but not specifically for our fire isolated stairways. But our fire isolated stairways are going to be our exits. So because we're having exits, you need to incorporate that. So that's D3.6. So that's many of the points in regards to provision of our exits and construction of our exits. Then going on to our services and equipment. So it takes us to section E, services and equipment. And fire systems take up the bulk of this. So E, so part E, E.1, we can have a look at performance requirements. Although the performance requirements on this is very vague. So a fire hose rule system must be installed to the degree necessary to allow occupants to safely undertake initial attack on a fire appropriate to the size of the fire compartment, the functional use of the building, and any other fire safety systems installed in the building, and the fire hazard. So I know that's a bit of a how long is a piece of string type statement. So really the I would say the most value in this is once again the deemed to satisfy provisions. So firefighting equipment deemed to satisfy provisions. So in that section we have first up, so we've got some basics here. We'll meet these performance requirements, are satisfied and complying with E1.1 to E10, and in the building containing atrium, we're not that. In alpine areas, we're not that. Additional requirements for Class 9B buildings, we're not that. And we're not farm buildings or farm sheds. So we'll move on. Then E1.3, fire hydrants. A fire hydrant system must be provided to serve a building having a total floor area greater than 500 square metres. So, for greater than 500 square metres, we have to have a hydrant system. Or where a fire brigade is available to attend a building fire. I think we'll have a fire brigade available to attend a building fire within Metropolitan Adelaide. Pretty sure about that. So, yeah, and some of this is certainly revision for you, right? We've been through this, but going through it from start to finish. The fire hydrant system must be installed in accordance with AS 2419.1, except Class 8, electricity network substation. They've got their own Australian standards. Except it cannot be connected to town main water supply, or we can connect to town main water supply, and 1 hour water storage is provided for firefighting. So our fire hydrant has to be installed in accordance with 2419. What I'm not expecting is for you to go into AS 2419 pull that apart and design fire hydrants. We won't be doing that, but what we will be doing is mentioning where we need to have fire hydrants and mentioning the Australian standard that they need to be compliant with, so that the fire systems engineer goes, okay, we've got the fire hydrants specified here, we put those fire hydrants in, and also with a lot of the fire systems stuff, there's a company in Wingfield called FireCorp that supply a lot of these components specifically made up to meet Australian standards. So that you go, okay, we need, well, the stuff I've dealt with is, it's all the stuff off tanks, like it's called table E flanges and so on. So you go, okay, we want to buy a table E flange with a policy 14 compliant fire tree. You come to a big box on a pallet, right? But you get all the equipment bolted together. It's compliant. You don't need to be designing that sort of thing. But you do need to specify it has to comply with that. We can't just go. Somebody can't just knock it up themselves at home and put it on. So our next bit. I wrote a note. No, I better go through it. Right. So fire hydrant system must be provided to serve a building. Total floor area greater than 500. Yeah. So we know that. Where are we? Or if not more than 2 story. Yeah. So it must be installed in accordance with this. It needs to comply with that. Where internal fire hydrants are provided, they must serve only the story on which they are located, except that a sole occupancy unit, class 2 or 3, we're not that, or of not more than 2 stories in class 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 building may be served by a single fire hydrant located at the level of egress from that sole occupancy unit, provided the fire hydrant can provide coverage to the whole of the sole occupancy unit. The difficulty, so this is saying, this is telling us we could possibly have a fire hydrant on the top floor and then one on the bottom floor if the hydrant from the top floor can serve the middle floor, or the hydrant from the bottom floor can serve the floor above. That's what that is telling us. The problem is, though, fire hydrants get used in conjunction with fire hoses. Either a fire hose reel or the fire hose the fire service screw on there and they take to another floor. The issue with us, with our building, is we need to have fire isolated stairways. With those fire isolated stairways, we can't go bringing hoses through those fire isolated stairways to go fighting a fire. So let's say we do the initial attack. Once again, the fire starts in that middle floor. We run downstairs, we get the fire hose reel, and we take the hose up through our stairway to start fighting the fire. Issue there is we're jamming that door open once again, so we don't have a fire isolated stairway. So yeah, so it says here you can do it if not more than 2 stories, etc. May be served by a single fire hydrant. We've got that option, but that only works if we've got an open stairway between either one. If we've got a fire isolated stairway, well then that doesn't work. Yeah. So in short, what that's telling us is we need to have a fire hydrant on every level. So fire hose reels. So it does not apply to class 2 or 3 building, or class 4 part of a building, etc., or class 8 or class 9. We're not any of those, so we have to keep reading on. So, B, a fire hose reel. So this is part E, this is E 1.4, part B. A fire hose reel system must be provided to serve the whole building where one or more internal fire hydrants are installed. Okay, so we have to have fire hydrants, right? So now, because we've got fire hydrants, we have to have fire hose reels. That's what that tells us. Or number 2, where internal fire hydrants are not installed to serve any fire compartment with a floor area greater than 500 square metres. So we don't have a choice about that. So we have to have fire hose reel systems to serve the whole building where one or more internal fire hydrants are installed. So when you read that and you go, okay, now we know we have to have fire hose reels that serve the whole of the building. What's the next thing you start thinking about once you read that? Yeah, where to put it? Yeah, exactly. And there's another really important question I'd be asking myself. Okay, how long is a fire hose? Because if we've got 400 about approximately 400 square metres of floor area, over a distance of almost 40 metres there, well, a bit over 40 metres. What if a fire hose is only 10 metres long? Then we're going to have four fire hoses about the place in the building. For the length of fire hoses, there's fire hose has to be installed in accordance with AS 2441, and there was another one. Because that's the installation. There's another Australian standard for the design of fire hose reels. You can go in there. It tells you all the dimensions of everything, but what it doesn't tell you is the length of fire hose. To get the length of a fire hose, basically you've got to go online to see who is producing compliant fire hose reels. We'll keep moving on, but what is it? What have I got here? So there's a company called Apex Fire Hose. That's what they're called. Can't read my own writing from that distance. It's Apex Fire Hose specifications. I wrote down. They produce 2 different fire hoses, one at 19mm, one at 25mm. To put it simply, either 19mm or 25mm meets the Australian standards. Then 19mm will reach 36 metres. So have you brought that up online?
So you're clicking away. So
Apex fire hose reels. It's got their dimensions, and then down here. Where is it? Here. So 90mm hose for 36 metres. So so that's So they manufacture and specify in accordance with those Australian standards. So that makes it simpler for you. You don't have to pull apart the Australian standards to work that one out or do the calculations yourself at what sort of distance of hose you can get on a reel of that size. So knowing 36 metres, you've got to think about where you can install those fire hose reels. They're not going to stick out and obstruct the path of travel for somebody going to an exit. Another thing we have to do is look at the location of those fire hose reels as well. So every hydrant requires a fire hose reel. Covered that bit. What have we got here? Yeah. Might just pause that. Yep, so back to it. So fire hose reels, for the specification of fire hose reels, so we go to AS 2441. Before I said that Apex fire hose company, they produce two fire hoses. They produce one at 19 millimeters, one at 25 millimeters. Yeah, that's the 19 millimeter one. Basically, so this, yeah, you'd always think, why is this table even in here? But it's got table 9 fire hose reel selections. 19 mil hose, yes, it's good for light hazard, ordinary hazard, and high hazard. Cool. 25 mil, yes, yes, yes. And it doesn't narrow the selection down for us much more. So yeah, okay. For 19 mil for high hazard, it's yes if sprinkled. So I guess that's the only essential difference there. But anyhow, well that leads us to think, okay, what are these different hazards? So head back up to our definitions. Got hazard classes. So high hazard, a class of hazard wherein the amount and type of combustibles present are such that fires of large initial size may be expected. Typical high hazards include woodworking areas, warehouses with high piled storage in excess of 4.5 metres, foam, plastics, processing and storage which constitutes a Class A fire risk. And we'll cover that Class A fire risk a little bit later on. But that doesn't really sound like what we're doing, does it? We're not manufacturing pallets and mattresses and things like that. So light hazard, I'll scroll that up. Light hazard is a class of hazard wherein the amount and type of combustibles present are such that fires of only small initial size may be expected. Typical light hazards include premises such as domestic/residential, offices, schoolrooms, churches and assembly halls which constitute Class A fire risk. So that's sounding a bit like our upper floors. And then ordinary hazard, a class of hazard wherein the amount and type of combustibles present are such that fires of moderate initial size may be expected. Typical ordinary hazards include mercantile storage and display areas, showrooms, and workshops which constitute a Class A fire risk. So that's possibly our ground floor there. That's sounding a lot like our ground floor. So we've got two hazards we'd be interested in for that. So that's about pressure supply. So yeah, we're looking at a mix of light hazard and ordinary hazard. I think we can be fairly confident about our 19mm hose. So in terms of deciding where to put those fire hose reels, so each fire hose reel shall be located along the normal paths of travel to an exit and in readily accessible position in accordance with the requirements of the BCA, or now the NCC. Fire hose reels shall be located in positions where access shall not be located in positions where access could present a hazard to the potential user or in fire isolated exits. So access to fire hose reels should not be obstructed from items such as furniture. Where a fire hose reel is installed in an external situation or aggressive environment, shall be protected by a cabinet or other suitable means. I'm fairly sure we won't be installing any fire hose reels outside, so we don't need to worry about that. Yeah, and these other aspects are probably not important to us. That's corrosive atmospheres or abnormally dusty or moisture-laden atmospheres, continuous or intense vibrations, environments having extremes of temperature. So the main thing we're we're considering those fire hose reels being located along the normal paths of travel to an exit and in a readily accessible position in accordance with the requirements of BCA. Right. What I did, yeah, it's unfortunate. I wrote myself a bunch of notes here rather than referring to each of the specific sections, and so now I'm going, oh, where did I get that note from? So I wrote, hose reel may be from a fire hydrant or from a fire hydrant or another water supply. But what clause that relates to, I have to quickly find that one. Okay, so we've already determined that we need fire isolated stairways and we need 2 of them because of our distances. We need to have a hydrant on every level. We've determined that. And we've also determined that wherever we have a fire hydrant, we need to have fire hose reels. Right? So we've got to have a hydrant and at least 1 reel on every floor. By that, we might need extra reels if that 36 metres isn't going to be enough to put out a fire at one other end of the building. So it begs the question, do we need to put in another fire hydrant? Well, the supply of water to a fire hose reel assembly shall be sufficient to enable the hose reel to deliver the minimum demand specified in table 6.1 for the 2 most hydraulically disadvantaged fire hose reels operating simultaneously. That was that, yeah. So basically what this is telling us is the only stipulation here is that you have to have enough water or enough pressure to that fire hose reel. So it can be from a metered water supply. So it can be from a mains water supply. It just has to meet this. So 0.33 litres per second for a 19 mil and 0.41 litres per second for a 25 mil. I don't know, and I don't know even where I'd start to work out what the flow rates are for our mains water at a given height within the CBD. Right, that's a little bit above me, and I certainly expect a little bit above you. But what we can specify in that situation, if we do need to have extra fire hose reels, say fire hose reel must have a supply of this much water as per this clause of the Australian standard. If that's not achievable from the mains water supply, as the fire systems engineer will be able to determine that, then they'll have to make those changes. So that's the path that I'd take on this one. So back to our. So that's it's our stairways, hydrants, and fire hose reels. There we go. So the next important thing we've got to start thinking about is sprinkler systems. Do we need a sprinkler system? So we've got sprinklers E1.5. So that's, here we go. 1.5. Okay, sprinklers. A sprinkler system must be installed in a building or part of a building when required by table E1.5 and comply with specification E1.5. So the first thing, we have to look at table E1.5 to see if we even need a sprinkler system. So, need a sprinkler system in all classes, including these, or including open deck car park, excluding open deck car park, or this open deck car park electric network substation. So all classes throughout the whole building, if any part of the building has an effective height of 25, effective height or more of 25 metres. I don't think we're going to be meeting that without us. Well, I don't know. Well, we've got to should keep reading on. But first of all, so in all classes you need it if it's going to be more than 25 metres. Like this building here, we've got 5 sprinklers here, but I can guarantee you are not 25 metres high. So we'll have to read on. Class 3 building, well, we're not one of those. Class 6 building. Well, there we go. That's us, or possibly us. Won't put words in your mouth, but if we were a Class 6 building in fire compartments where either of the following apply: a floor area of more than 3,500 square metres. Are we going to be that much, do you think? 3,500 square metres?
No, I think we do need it.
No. Or a volume of more than 21,000 cubic metres? No. Don't think we're going to be meeting that. Class 7, we're not one of those. Class 9, we're not one of those. Class 9C, 9B, not one of those. So, cool. We don't need to have sprinkler systems. So, having covered that, E1.6, here we go. So do we need to have portable fire extinguishers? So, portable fire extinguishers must be provided as listed in table E1.6, and for class 2 or 3 buildings, class 4 buildings provided, etc. We're not those, or where internal fire hydrants are not installed to serve any fire compartment or floor area. I think we've already decided on our fire hydrants for that. Anyhow, so provided as listed in table E1.6. So we get down here to table E1.6 requirements for extinguishers. So general provisions, class 2 to 9 buildings except within sole occupancy units of a class 9C. We're not sole occupancy units in a class 9C, so we're going to have to read this bit. We need them to cover class A, E or E fire risks associated with emergency services switchboards. So if we're going to have an emergency services switchboard, we have to have that. To cover class F fire risks involving cooking oils and fats in kitchens. Do either of you have a kitchen in your building?
Yeah,
Yeah, because So we're going to have to have portable fire extinguisher to cover class F fire risks involving cooking oils and fats in kitchens. Okay, yeah, I guess essentially that kitchen is designed more for the occupants of the building to be heating up lunches and things like that, right? But what we can't guarantee is that none of that's going to be happening. You know, they have an opening night for, you know, yours is the car showroom. They've got the latest model BMW coming out. They serve canapes, etc., deep fried spring rolls. Got cooking oils and fats. So, to cover Class B fire risks in locations where flammable liquids in excess of 50 litres are stored or used. Yeah, Isaac, listen to that one, because if you've got a car show, I mean, did you use yours for car showroom as well?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So both of you. Yeah. So, oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. No, we've got an exit. Right. Not including that held in fuel tanks of vehicles. There we go. So, cover Class B fire risk in location with flammable liquids in excess of 50 litres are stored, but not including that held in fuel tanks of vehicles. Well, possibly we don't need them there. We're not going to be, we're not going to be refueling vehicles in that showroom. To cover Class A fire risks in normally occupied fire compartments less than 500 square metres, not provided with fire hose reels, excluding open deck car parks. So we do have, well, I assume we're going to be putting in some fire hose reels, aren't we? So I don't think we're going to have to satisfy that, are we? So to cover Class A fire risks in normally occupied fire compartments less than 500 square metres. that all comes down to, is each floor a separate fire compartment? I think it will be. Yeah. Why do you, well, can either of you tell me why they would be separate fire compartments? Yeah, yeah. We've got fire isolated stairways. If we've got fire isolation to our plumbing and services between the floors, well then we have separate fire isolated compartments. I'm not saying that we need to spend a whole lot of money to ensure they're fire isolated compartments so we don't have to buy fire extinguishers. I mean, that's the false economy. It's probably much cheaper to buy fire extinguishers. But I think, yeah, and that's something to check out. But if we can be confident they are going to be, well, let's click on fire compartments. So fire compartment means total space of a building, or when referred to in performance requirements, deemed to satisfy provisions, any part of a building separated from the remainder by walls and or floors, each having an FRL not less than that required for a firewall for that type of construction, and where all openings in the separating construction are protected in accordance with the deemed to satisfy provisions of the relevant part. Gets a bit broad, but our deemed to satisfy provisions of the relevant parts will be in terms of fire isolation. Right? So we can, so we may need to, if we're going to be putting notes in regards to fire isolation between our floors, well then we won't have to include these extinguishers to cover Class A, because we've already got hose reels, is the thing. If we didn't have hose reels, it would be different. To cover Class A fire risk in classrooms, doesn't apply to us. Cover Class A fire risk associated with Class 2 or 3 buildings, Class 4 part of a building, doesn't apply to us. So, yeah, because we've got our fire hose reels, we're separating into separate compartments. That's the only one we have to worry about. So that makes things really easy in terms of specifying where our fire extinguishers go. So where are they going to go? Where do you reckon? Where do you reckon our? What's that?
Fire extinguishers go.
Yeah, in this case, so the only one we have to worry about is cover Class F fire involving cooking oils and fats in kitchens. Where do you reckon the fire extinguisher is going to go? Yeah, well, it's going to go. Yeah, it's going to. Yeah, you want to be placing, and we can. So we have a look at this. Have a look at AS 2444, and actually we'll have a quick look at AS 2444. But basically, you're going to want to have that fire extinguisher close to a doorway, so close to an entry, within that kitchen area. So if a fire happens within that kitchen area, someone can go to that door, grab the fire extinguisher, and put it out. So it has to be in an easily accessible location, and a location which is going to be clearly visible. And also a little bit separated from where the fire incident is going to happen. You don't want to have a pot of burning oil and the fire extinguisher being on the other side of that pot of burning oil, or oil with water dripping on it, splattering about the place. You don't want that fire extinguisher to really be very close to that event either. So, now, have either of you actually ever had to use a fire extinguisher? No? Yeah. I've had to use one once, but up to that point I thought, okay, fire extinguishers, they sit around, they don't get used, but came in super handy. Like any of that fire stuff, possibly you don't take it too seriously until you So you have one of those sort of events, and you realise actually it is super important to have this stuff sitting around, accessible right in those moments. So it is a super important thing. Right. Okay, so promise to look at AS 2444. So it sets out our signage, etc. I don't expect you to go drawing up signs specifying our screw hole locations and things like that. Once again, we can say, as per AS2, like fire signage, as per AS2444. But actually, that's the one I was looking for. Sorry. Extinguisher location. Each extinguisher will be located in a conspicuous and readily accessible position. Extinguishers should not be located in positions where access could present a hazard to the potential user. Where practicable, extinguishers should be located along normal paths of travel and near exits. So hence near the door to the kitchen there. For all installations, extinguishers in and around buildings should comply with items A, B below. Domestic installation defines class 1A buildings, etc., etc. Extinguishers shall have their locations clearly indicated by placement of the location signs as shown in figure 3.1 and be mounted at the appropriate height shown in figure 3.2, varied only where there is a possibility of dislodgement and then only where ready accessibility is maintained. So the nuts and bolts of that is have signage as stipulated in 3.1 and have mounting heights as stipulated in 3.2. So our typical extinguisher location sign. So we have a sign like that, and our mounting heights. So mounting heights of portable fire extinguishers and location signs. So at least 100 millimeters off the ground, but a maximum of 1200. So somewhere in that Goldilocks zone, and then our fire signage, well, our fire extinguisher sign, minimum 2 meters from the floor. Okay. Did you guys want to take a bit of a break? Because it's kind of that's all cool.
Yeah, it's all cool.
It's all cool. Yeah, yeah. Keep rolling. Okay. Actually, what we've got in here is 4.2.1. I'll just go through that as well. Yeah. So because we've got fire hose reels and because we've got separate fire compartmentalisation, we're fairly sure that we don't need to be worrying about these. But for instances where we don't have these fire hose reels, we don't have those aspects that we are required to have quite a few fire extinguishers mounted about the place, it's important to know this stuff. So primary fire, so 4.2.1 primary extinguisher protection. For Class A fire risks, extinguishers shall be distributed in accordance with Table 4.1. The travel distances from any point to the nearest extinguisher shall not be greater than 15 metres. So if we don't have hose reels, then we do actually have to start having a lot of fire extinguishers dotted about the place, because in some instances 15 metres, like if we're doing a warehouse or something like that, you've got lots of 15 metres happening about the place. So plenty of extinguishers. Where Class A fire risk involves electronically energised equipment, extinguisher or another available extinguisher shall have an E classification. So you've got your different classifications of your fire extinguishers for different applications. So you've got carbon dioxide extinguishers, dry powder extinguishers, foam extinguishers for different uses. And Class A fire risks where fire extinguishers are provided to complement a fixed automatic fire suppression system complying with Australian Standard 2118. Extinguishers shall be in accordance with Table 4.1. So have a quick look at this Table 4.1. So for Class A fire risks, we've got maximum floor area per extinguisher and then maximum floor area if you've got an automatic fire suppression system. And then we've got, once again, our fire hazard. So if you remember our fire hazard from before, light, ordinary, and high. Light is light would probably be that room over there. We've got a few things that might burn. I'd put this one in ordinary because we've got some computers and got a few more things to burn. It's a bit more like an office environment in here. And a high, I don't know if there's any high fire risk bits around here, but if we're manufacturing, working with wood and foams and things like that. And same sort of thing. So that's Class A fire risk. So that's general combustible stuff, woods, plastics, and whatnot. Class B fire risks. That's those flammable fuels and things like that. So tins of petrol and so on. And we've got a table here for Class B. So distribution of extinguishers for Class B fire risks in areas containing fixed automatic fire suppression and one without automatic fire suppression. So just be aware that there are those parameters around frequency and placement of them as well. What I've got here for cooking oils and fats, 4.4.4. So we better have a quick look at that one because that's the one we are thinking about for our building. So 4.4.4, cooking oils and fats. An extinguisher shall be located between 2 and 20 metres from the risk. So not within 2 metres of the risk. We don't want to be that close, but we don't want to be further than 20 metres from the risk. Where a fire extinguisher is being selected to control fires involving cooking oils and fats, an extinguisher with an F classification and rating applicable to the surface area of the hazard shall be provided and shall be the extinguisher chosen to the risk. So it's important that you remember this Australian standard and this particular clause in regards to that and that location. So, but within 20 metres, it's going to be pretty simple for you guys to achieve with that floor plan. Right. Right. Back to our NCC. So we've got our exits, our fire suppression systems, our hose reels, hydrants, and now fire extinguishers. And now the other thing we've got to think about is smoke and occupants warnings. I've got a couple more things to think about. So we've got smoke, and then also certainly when we've got smoke, we're going to have illuminated signage, etc. People have got to know where they've got to go in the event of it all being dark. It's all well and good that we can, we've got nothing going on and we can just look and see, okay, that's our access plan, etc. Or the emergency exit plan. But then when it's all dark and we've got smoke down here, got to go under, we need to have illuminated signage as well. But first of all, our smoke hazard management. Once again, look at the deemed to satisfy provisions. Now what do we have? So what I've got down here is so once again this standard one for open spectator standard electricity network substation, not either one of those. So a building must comply with B, C and D and table E 2.2a as applicable to class 2 and 2 to 9 buildings, such that each separate part complies with the relevant positions for the classification, and as applicable to class 6 and 9b buildings, such that each separate part complies with relevant provisions for the classification. So we're going to have a look at both of these tables because we are of a building in classification 2 to 9, and I assume you were class 6. Yeah. So we've got E 2.2a and E 2.2b. E 2. So fire isolated exits. So we've already determined our fire isolated exits. Buildings more than 25 metres in effective height. We're not one of those. And then buildings more than 25 metres in effective height for class 2 and 3 buildings. We're not one of those either. Class 5, 6, 7, B, 8, 9 buildings. Class 5 or 9B school building or part of a building having a rise in stories of more than 3. So we're not that, because we're only 3 stories. Or what have we got? Class 6 building or part of a building having a rise in stories of more than 2. Or building having a rise in stories of more than 2 containing class 5 and class 6. Because, now, either of you remember, actually I don't know if we've covered it in this class, covered it certainly in materials and methods, multiple classification of buildings.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Where we've got multiple classification of buildings, what do we need to do? You do. So, yeah, so basically, yeah, when you've got a multiple classification of buildings, let's say we've got a 5 and a 6 together. Class 5 says you don't need to do anything. Class 6, you do need to do something. Yeah, you have to do something, basically. So, the building must be provided with, in each fire isolated stairway, fine with that, including any associated fire isolated passageway, fire isolated ramp, etc. An automatic air pressurization system for fire isolated exits in accordance with AS/NZS 1668.1. Not expecting you to design an air pressurization system for those fire isolated stairways, but expecting that there will be some mention of an air pressurized system. A zone smoke control system in accordance with AS/NZS 1668.1 if the building has more than one fire compartment. Are we going to have more than one fire compartment? Pretty sure we are, because we've got 3 separate floors separated by fire. Separated by those stairways. We're going to have fire suppression systems like fire collars around any plumbing, etc., to ensure that a spread in fire that we have in the bottom floor doesn't go up to the top, and we're going to have FRLs for our flooring between each of those. So we're going to have separate fire compartments, or an automatic smoke detection alarm system complying with specification E 2.2A, or a sprinkler system complying with specification E 1.5. So let's have a look at that. So what it's saying is that we can have the air pressurization system for those exits, or a zone smoke control system, or an automatic smoke detection and alarm system, comply with this, or a sprinkler system. So it's a bit of a choose your own adventure there in that term. And I guess, yeah. I guess what have we got to? I guess that's up to you guys to choose what you want to go with in that regard. So building must be provided with that, or that, or that, or that. It's a bit interesting actually, because I think they all serve slightly different roles. But we already know that we don't have to have a sprinkler system. And installing a sprinkler system, I don't know that I don't see anywhere else in the NCC that's really helping us out. Because sometimes you get these clauses that say, well, if you've got a sprinkler system, you don't need to have all these things, like the fire hose rules. If we've got fire hose rules, we don't need the fire extinguishers. Same sort of thing. I'm not sure the sprinkler system is really helping us out a lot in compliance with other things. Fairly expensive system to install. Possibly an automatic smoke detection and alarm system complying with those specifications is a good idea, or a zone smoke control system in accordance with AS and ZS 1668.1 if the building has more than one fire compartment. Yeah. Look, I'll leave that for you to choose. Basically, a zone smoke control system means that's ensuring that you don't get smoke shared between levels, between fire compartments. So that will be within your air conditioning system, baffles to ensure that smoke doesn't pass through, etc. in the event of a fire. And you can have a look at AS NZS 1668.1 and explore those options. Yeah. Well, let's look at this automatic smoke detection and alarm system complying with specification E2.2A. That's what I'm suggesting. So, smoke detection and alarm systems. Type of system: required automatic smoke detection and alarm system must comply with the following. For class. Oh yeah, and why would we've got class 2, 3, and 4 buildings bundled together here, and then class 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 buildings down here. Oh, and then class 9, like healthcare building down there. Why do you think 2, 3, and 4 would be bundled together? Why would they have a different alarm system than 5, 6, 7, 8?
Because 5, 6, 7, 8 is bigger.
Yeah, bigger scale. Yeah. There's one really, I think there's one really important difference in the alarm type thing, about the notification of people. Why would it differ? Yes, okay, when you get bigger, people don't know the building as well, and so on, they need to be told what to do, that sort of thing. But in class 2, 3, and 4 buildings, and if so, we've got the NCC split into two. We've got class 1 and 10, right? And then we've got class 2 to 9 in volume 1. If we included class 1 into this volume of the NCC, it'd be sitting in here as well. The reason we've got these ones bundled together is because we've got bedrooms. People will be asleep. So so whenever people are sleeping and there's smoke, they need to be told, you need a really high pitched alarm, and those fire alarms have to be interconnected. So if you've got say a fire happening in the garage or something, that tells people in the bedroom that there's a fire happening. With our 5, 6, 7, 8, people are normally awake in the office normally. So that's a smoke detection system, whereas within these ones they have to be a smoke alarm system, and that's the two differences. So smoke detection system complying with clause 4. So, smoke detection system must, subject to C and D, comply with AS 1670.1, except for the provisions of clause 3.28F. So we can quickly 1670.1 and what was that? 3.28F, was it? (3.28F) was it? So areas protected with the sprinkler system complying with. Okay. So we've already approached that one. We can have a smoke detector system or the sprinkler system. So system must activate a building occupant warning system in accordance with clause 6. Clause 6, building occupant warning system. Building occupant warning system provided as part of a smoke hazard management system must comply with clause 3.22 of AS 1670 to sound through all occupied areas. And it's class 2 and 3 buildings. So we don't, it appears we have no exceptions for class 5 and 6. So yeah, so basically that building occupant warning system must comply with clause 3.22 of AS 1670 to sound through all occupied areas. So yeah, back to this one again. Oh. 3.22. Occupant warning, and I'll make that a little larger. Well. So at least one of the following shall be provided to alert occupants of a fire alarm condition. An emergency warning system in accordance with AS 1670.4, where the alert signal or phased evacuation is intended to be used. An amplified sound system or audible alarm devices complying with the following as required. Evacuate signal shall be transmitted simultaneously to all occupied areas of the building. That's all fine.
One of the few things that stay up late for discretion.
Okay.
And you guys have to do
So basically what it's saying is if we have a smoke detection system, it needs to work in concert with this alarm system, and that alarm system has to comply with that clause in terms of the occupant warning. So there are a few things in there that may be important for us to make notes of on our plans. So, or you can just say an occupant warning system in accordance with E 3.22. So back to NCC for that one. So yeah, so that's if we go with the automatic smoke detection system. If you want, we can install a sprinkler system complying with specification E1.5 as well. Maybe simpler, but probably not. Oh, look, you may want, or alternatively, you may want to specify a zone smoke control system in accordance with that. So, also, so E2.2a again, back to that. Clause 4, that through. So, yeah, must comply with AS 1670.1. AS 1670.1 also shows the locations of those systems. So I'll just go back up to the contents page, and where we've got location of detectors, page 36. Location detectors. So for the purpose of this clause, 3.27, the location requirements for detectors shall also apply to smoke alarms and heat alarms. Detectors shall be provided throughout all areas of the building except as detailed in clause 3.28, where detection is installed in accordance with section 7. Detection shall be installed in the locations specified in the NCC. So we'll go back to our National Construction Code. For our smoke detection systems. Okay, so those smoke detection systems, the locations are specified in clause 4. So smoke detection system must accept the provisions, blah, blah, blah. In kitchens and other areas where the use of areas likely to result in smoke detectors causing spurious signals. Yeah, actually, this is a bit funny. I don't know what relates, because typically you don't install a smoke detector within a kitchen because someone burns their toast, keeps setting it off everywhere, cleans the batteries out, etc. So yeah, got to read through that a bit better. But except where the kitchen or other areas sprinkler, the detectors need not be installed in the kitchen or other areas likely to result in spurious signals in a class 2, 3, class 4 part of the building.